Hello. Welcome. I deserve this. Anyways, welcome to the second session 0 of Fallout New Thedas. We have the lovely Andrea with us. And Dally is once again recording, but she is remaining silent in the call since it is not her session 0. And I am your DM, Hannah. Hi, everybody. All right. Andrea, do you want a second to introduce your character?
Daryl is Daryl.
Thank you. All right. Ready?
Yes, as ready as I'll ever be.
He's neural ready.
Daryl is ready.
Neural is always ready. All right. You awake in an unfamiliar room. It's humid and you can feel the metal of an operating table sticking to the skin of your back.
Daryl attempts to sit up.
You discover that your hands and legs are strapped down by leather straps.
Daryl is going to attempt to break the leather strap.
All right, let's go. Roll me athletics.
Okay!
Also, I said this to Dally earlier, but because an average ability score is a 5 in this system, like the DC for something of average difficulty is about a 15.
Okay.
So I just want to say that because like earlier Dally rolled a 19 and it ended up like not being great, you know?
But it's still just D20 plus whatever skill, skill I'm using, correct?
Yes, the expectation is just that the skills will be a little higher statistically.
31.
All right. You managed to snap the leather and the buckle just clean off the strap on your right arm, which will give you the freedom to undo the others if you so choose.
Daryl does so.
Good, because if you had chosen not to, I feel like that would have been pretty much it. All right. So you look around and you see a cart with some surgical implements. They're all red and kind of glittering in the light, but it doesn't seem to be with blood.
Daryl looks for the door.
You find it. You also hear a scratching at it on the outside.
Daryl goes to the door and opens the door.
There's a dog. He looks thrilled to see you and sort of surprised.
Daryl looks surprised at the dog.
The dog wags his tail and tilts his head.
Daryl also tilts his head.
Woof.
Hello, dog.
The dog,
There's dog no way out.
the dog tilts its head for a second and then nods sharply and starts trotting down the hallway. And every few steps he looks behind him to see if you're following.
Daryl follows dog.
You catch up and find the dog sniffing around what looks to be like, I mean, it's definitely a skeleton. But it looks like he was some kind of like mining or construction worker at some point. There's a hard hat. There's a hammer that looks like a sledgehammer used for, you know, breaking down rocks and walls and things. And there's a lunchbox next to him, and he's wearing some sort of jumpsuit, you think? It is blue.
Is Daryl wearing anything?
Neural is wearing a hospital gown and some lovely surgical sutures.
Daryl is going to take the sledgehammer and the lunchbox and open the lunchbox.
Inside, you find some nicely preserved canned foods and what looks like it could have been like a really old apple or mute fruit or something. But the canned foods are still good. And you also find a really, really ugly leather bracelet with like a screen on it. It's not a great fashion statement.
Dura will take the canned foods and leave the and just have and take the lunchbox with it, but leave the ugly leather bracelet inside.
Wait, okay, so he's just like, so he's taking the whole lunchbox? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, he's taking the whole lunchbox and not putting on the ugly leather bracelet.
All right. That sounds right to me. And what do you do with the jumpsuit, the hard hat, and the hammer?
He takes the hammer and the hat.
All right. We are going out of this just mooning everybody. All right. You go a little further down the hall, and all of a sudden you hear like this very soft whooshing noise, and the dog kind of just scampers and hides somewhere. You're not sure where. And around the corner comes this floating white ball with eyes on sticks and little pokey things coming out of it.
Neural sets the lunchbox down and holds up the hammer.
Oh, specimen KNR1. I beg your pardon, but your procedures are not complete. Please, allow me to sedate you. When you wake up, you'll feel so much better. And it moves towards you with a needly pokey thing.
Neural would like to rage.
Neural can rage. Neural should also roll for initiative. All right. Neural goes first.
Woo! No smash!
All right. Roll to hit.
So do I add accuracy or do I just leave that?
Yeah, it's a d20 plus your accuracy.
Okay.
You smash right into the body of the orb and roll me damage. Oh shit, is that a critical for you?
Yes.
You know what? Don't even fucking roll. Don't roll. You just your hammer smashes into it and there's this electrical surge. The whole body of it bends inward and it flies across the corridor, smacks into a wall, and falls to the ground completely lifeless.
Girl just looks at the hammer and just smiles, very happy about the prospect of this hammer.
There's a soft zzz from the nurse handy.
Neural now goes and looks for the dog and picks up the lunchbox.
You find the dog wedged inside of another one of those instrument carts. And he's kind of like curled up, but his tail was poking out.
Neural attempts to pat the dog.
The dog wags his tail and hops back out of the cart and points his head back towards what you guess is probably the exit. Either that or you're just following a dog around.
Neural is just going to continue to follow the dog.
Oh. Also, the dog.
Good boy.
If you look at him closely, you can see that he's wearing this kind of it's a silver chain. It almost looks more like something a person would wear than a dog, and it's got little charms on it. One of them is the little dog charm for Monopoly, and one of them looks to be like of a similar make, but it's a ham shank.
Hello, meat dog.
The dog kind of cocks its head and then wags its tail at you and keeps going. It's a long corridor, with lots of like flickering fluorescent lights, and you can't see any windows or anything that seems to be leading to the outside so far, but it is very warm and humid.
Neural is looking around to see on the way out if there's anything else that he can pick up.
There's not a ton. It's a pretty like tidy little area. You do find what seems to be a syringe somebody dropped on the ground.
Neural will take the syringe.
It's definitely full of something. You do not have any clue what.
Neural shall put it in the lunchbox.
Yeah, I mean, you can roll science and medicine to identify it, but yeah.
Is my science and medicine? Oh no, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's like, or you can just put it in the lunchbox.
I do have a quick question though.
Yeah.
Does Neural's 3 intelligence means he can't read?
No, Neural can read if Neural learned to read. I mean, I would assume Neural would be like a slowish reader, but like as long as you have at least 1 point in intelligence, you're sapient and, depending on your education, at least capable of being literate.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of that, when you swung the hammer, you noticed that the inside of your wrist, where it's kind of sore, has a marking on it that says KNR1.
Neural.
The dog looks happily up at you and wags his tail again.
Come on, meat dog. Neural starts trying to find the exit.
The meat dog follows you, and you reach a T intersection in the passage. And at the end of the intersection, right in front of you, there is a closed door with the light on inside it.
Neural goes and inspects the door.
Who is that? Who is outside? And at this point, the dog completely loses his shit. He grabs you, he jumps up and grabs your arm in his mouth and starts trying to yank you away from the door.
Oh, trust this meat dog. So Neural is going to follow meat dog.
I'm coming outside. You don't smell right. And at this point, you and Meat Dog book it down the hallway. At least you do if you're keeping up with Dog Meat.
Neural is going to attempt to keep up with meat dog.
All right. Roll me athletics.
37.
All right. You guys are fucking gone. You're out of there. In the far, far distance behind you, you hear a door creak open, but that's all.
Neural does not turn around. Neural just keeps going.
All right. You get the sense that you're starting to head downhill. The air gets a little cooler, and the maze of tunnels eventually lets out into a passage that looks a lot older. There's no fluorescent lights anymore. There's some lanterns that they look like normal lanterns, but they don't flicker at all. And the area changes from drywall and things to this very rough-hewn stone. And the ceiling starts to drip salt water onto you. Below your feet, you can see that over the years that it's dried and crystallized, and it sort of crunches underneath your feet as you go and sparkles in the lamplight. Eventually, you get to a place where the floor just ends, and as you look out over it, you hear this scraping in the distance, and Dogmeat sits at the edge of where the floor ends and wags his tail, and he's just sitting there panting, waiting for whatever this very loud screeching thing is.
Neural actually turns around to see what's behind them.
Nothing is behind you. No one seems to be chasing you. But out in the area where the floor is stopped, a light appears from in the distance, and as it gets closer, you realize, well, that it's getting closer. I was going to describe it some other way, but yeah, it's a light and it's getting closer to you. And the noise is getting louder and louder, and eventually what looks sort of like a train arrives, and it screeches to a halt on these really ancient rusty tracks. And the doors pop open, and you hear what was probably at one point an automated announcement that sounds sort of like
Neural tilts his head, then steps onto the train.
Dogmeat hops on behind you and digs under one of the seats and drags out what looks to be some sort of leather briefcase.
Neural opens the briefcase.
It doesn't have much in it that's very fancy, but it's got some clothes of various sizes and genders and colors and things. They're not super well preserved, but they're not rags either. And you also see a couple of like sealed silver packets that have the letters MRE stamped on them. And Dogmeat sits and pants up at you. And he just looks super proud of himself.
Neural pats Meat Dog on the head and then puts on a pair of pants.
Incredible.
He then transfers the contents of the lunchbox over to the briefcase.
All right. As you do that, the train doors slide shut behind you, and it starts to move with a loud lurch.
Neural takes a seat on the ground.
Not the seats.
The ground.
The ground. Dogmeat sits in your lap and looks expectantly at you. Pat, pat, pat. You can't really tell where you're going. Everything's dark. You see a couple brief flashes of something that could be stations, but your train doesn't stop for a long while. As you go, you feel the air get colder and colder. Not freezing, but it was miserably hot when you started, and now it feels like maybe a crisp fall day. The humidity lets up a little as well, but not completely because you're underground. It does also start to smell more like dirt. And eventually that screeching noise that you first heard starts again, and the train shudders to a halt, and the doors pop open, and you hear
Neural looks at Meat Dog.
Meat Dog hops out of the train and then turns around waiting for Neural.
Neural gets up, grabs his briefcase, and follows Meat Dog.
Okay. You walk out into a place that looks more like a sewer tunnel than a train station. There's some daylight filtering through the holes in a man cover at the top of a ladder that's far, far above your head. Like, I mean, the ladder comes down to the ground, but the top of it is above your head.
Nero looks up at the ladder, then looks at Meat Dog, and is a little sad.
Meat Dog sits down inside your hospital gown. I assume you took the hospital gown off, or did you just put on pants?
He's still wearing the hospital gown. He just put on pants underneath.
All right. Meat Dog kind of paws at your suitcase.
Neural opens the briefcase.
He noses around for a second and then pulls up what looks to be like some sort of harness. It's definitely not meant for dogs, but you could probably make it.
Neural attempts to strap in Meat Dog and then somehow get the harness attached to Neural somehow so we can carry everything up.
Yeah. The harness attaches to you pretty easily, and the Meat Dog kind of wedges itself under the straps. And I'm just gonna say roll me an athletics check to get all of that up without dropping it.
29.
All right. Yep, I'd say that'll do it. There's a couple points where it gets sort of hairy. You bobble the suitcase a little, but it doesn't fall. You're able to catch it in time, and you make it up to the top.
Once they are on solid ground, like Daryl will use the hammer to open the manhole cover, and then once they are on solid ground outside, Daryl will unharness the dog.
He barks cheerfully and wags his tail at you.
Pat, pat.
Then it looks like he's about to run off somewhere, but as he turns to do it, the sky turns this sickly, roiling green, and you hear an ear-splitting roar. And that is the end of session 0.
Well then,
I couldn't figure out how to get you where you were to where you needed to be without railroading you. And then I thought, well, if I have to railroad her...
might as well put me on a literal train.
Yeah.
I mean, that's perfectly fine with me.
But
That Meat Dog.
I also really expected combat to last a little longer.
I kind of did just a dump into strength.
Yeah. I mean, that works for you.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Andrea, for playing, and Allie for recording. And everyone have a good evening.